When you envision DC, do you think of the White House, the monuments, the cherry blossoms, or is it the devastating food insecurity crisis that continues to ravage our city? For a community, much less an entire nation, as affluent and well-off as ours, how is it that our neighbors continue to go hungry? Federal relief programs may have prevented serious issues from developing during the COVID-19 pandemic, but did it do anything to prevent already existing problems from intensifying? What can we do to help members of our community in need? How can we rebuild DC back better than ever? What will it take to make sure no resident of DC goes hungry? As a member of the DC community of over 657,000 residents, your actions make an impact not only on the city at large, but also on your neighbors who may be struggling to put food on the table for their families and lack the resources to do so. And this problem has only worsened due to the pandemic. According to reports, as many as 250,000 residents were thrown into food insecurity in 2020 in the DC region, joining some 400,000 who have already been struggling to get meals even before the pandemic began. As more people in our community have lost wages and face dire economic hardships, food insecurity has become significantly more prevalent and more visible. You may be asking yourself, what exactly is food insecurity? The United States Department of Agriculture defines food insecurity as the limited or uncertain availability of nutritionally adequate and safe food, or the limited or uncertain ability to acquire such food for a household. In more simplistic terms, food insecurity occurs when people don't know when or where their next meal will come from. The pandemic may have exacerbated the food insecurity crisis in our city. It's far from the sole cause. Food insecurity is a chronic condition that existed before the onset of COVID, when 10.6% of district residents were food insecure in 2019. And while the public health emergency has subsided and the food insecurity rate has fallen from 21.1% in 2020 to a near pre-COVID return of 11% in 2021, this stat is misleading. In reality, this generalized data hides the fact that this issue weighs disproportionately upon the shoulders of specific subpopulations, including Black and Latinx households, households with children, and seniors. According to DC Hunger Solutions, the struggle to afford enough food is almost twice as high in households with children in the district than households without children, 21.25% compared to 11% respectively. In addition, DC has one of the highest rates of seniors living in poverty in the U.S. According to the National Foundation to End Senior Hunger, 11.1% of DC's nearly 120,000 seniors are currently food insecure, and 20.1% of them are hungry, the highest rate in the nation. Furthermore, while white households with children reported statistically zero food insufficiency in April 2021, Black and Latinx households with children reported 21% and 29.3% food insufficiency, respectively. This shows us that food insecurity is a symptom of larger systemic problems in our food systems and society in general. Food insecurity is not an acute emergency, but rather a chronic condition for low-income DC residents that existed long before COVID's public health emergency. Access to opportunity and food in our community is far from equal. Many of our very neighbors are earnestly seeking opportunities to thrive, but are still held back by a web of interrelated forces that form barriers to progress. No one understands these barriers like the Gittens family. Epiphany and Humberto, both Army veterans, live with their 3 children in Southwest DC. Since being medically discharged from the military, Humberto and his family have been looking for affordable housing, steady work, and proper food. Needless to say, their lives have been nothing short of challenging.
At some point in their life, needs a little assistance. As a mother, your heart breaks to have your children tell you they're hungry and I can't feed them. That hurts me so much.
Or take 25-year-old Carrie Amaya. Originally from El Salvador, she lost her restaurant job during the pandemic and was among thousands at Megamart in hopes of obtaining one of those free bags. She had been feeding her 6-year-old popcorn for 3 days straight, leaving almost nothing for herself. An increased focus on these populations is clearly needed to combat persistent food insecurity. Without meaningful structural change, this problem will long outlast the COVID-19 pandemic. Why let this crisis perpetuate when we can all work together to ensure that every man, woman, and child knows when and where their next meal is coming from? We have the means to work toward achieving the greatest good for the greatest number of people, so why shouldn't we? We know there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed as we try to return to normal after COVID, some of which may take priority over solving food insecurity in the district. We know that employment and labor force recovery remains slow in the region, and even slower in DC. DC's population keeps growing, but housing construction simply isn't keeping up, forcing hardworking, low-income members of our community out of their homes and into the streets. Solving the food insecurity crisis in DC is also expensive. People facing hunger in DC are estimated to report needing $49,250,000 more per year to meet their food needs, money our local government simply cannot devote to bringing an end to food insecurity in one fell swoop. Food insecurity also often exacerbates and is exacerbated by other determinants of health, such as economic stability, education access and quality, social and community contexts, health care access and quality, and neighborhood and built environment. Solving food insecurity won't necessarily solve the systemic injustice and structuralized racialization that continues to prevent progress. All these factors are interconnected, and because of that, they all influence each other's progress or lack thereof. But think about what our community will gain by working together to solve food insecurity. By taking tangible action toward eliminating food insecurity in DC, we will be one monumental step closer to eliminating hunger and malnutrition in our city. Access to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food would finally be recognized as a basic need and human right for all DC residents, regardless of financial status and other. Children in our community will have the ability to grow up to become doctors, athletes, and world leaders without the stress of when and where they're going to get their next meal weighing them down. It's simple. A child's chance for a bright tomorrow starts with getting enough food to eat today. For children, food insecurity is particularly devastating. Not having enough healthy food can have serious implications for a child's physical and mental health, academic achievement, and future prosperity. Research from Feeding America shows an association between food insecurity and delayed development in young children, risk of chronic illness like asthma and anemia, and behavioral problems like hyperactivity, anxiety, and aggression. We have a responsibility to the next generation to give them every opportunity to succeed, including equitable access to good and healthy food. Perhaps most importantly, our economy will be able to thrive once again and more than ever before, something we all want for our city. An adequate, nutritious diet enables, among many things, physical and mental health, learning, and concentration. All of these can contribute to an individual's economic advancement over the course of a lifetime. But food insecurity impedes these things both at an individual and societal level. In a food-secure society, economic growth is distributed fairly across society, increasing economic participation in ways that lead to shared prosperity and inclusive growth. When prosperity and opportunity are not limited to the top few, metro economies grow faster, stronger, and for longer periods of time because they can tap into deeper veins of talent and draw from a more diverse, resilient, and skilled workforce. Why let food insecurity prevent this economic revival from becoming a reality? We know that food insecurity needs to be addressed. So what can you do? Join a mutual aid group. These grassroots organizations help out those in need outside of official government programs, licensed nonprofits. Volunteer for those specifically serving Wards 7 and 8, where food insecurity is most concentrated. Volunteer at a food bank or community kitchen. The Capital Area Food Bank is always looking for volunteers to sort through and pack food, as well as distribute food off-site. The DC Central Kitchen, whose mission is to serve about 5,000 meals a day, also needs volunteers to prepare meals and pick produce at local farms. Host a food drive and encourage others to collect and donate non-perishables. Write your local officials to show support for the No Senior Hungry Omnibus Amendment Act of 2021, which proposes to start a task force to solve food insecurity issues for the elderly population in DC. We can start the wave of change to solve food insecurity in Washington, D.C. So before you think about the White House, Capitol, or the cherry blossoms, think about members of our community first. The people make D.C. what it is, not the government buildings or seasonal changes. Our neighbors matter. Children matter. The Gittins family and Carrie Amaya matter. We have the ability to change the trajectory of food insecurity in our community. We have the ability to lead the district toward progress, but only with all of your help. If we want something to change, we have to change it. We can't wait for someone to do it for us. Without your help, our hardworking neighbors will be left to fend for themselves and continue living a food insecure life.